And it's the last Sunday of September in our series on secrets of mind body medicine. And this song is an anthem, if you will, to surviving adversity. And it's always been a fun song. It's got a great beat. So I thought, let's play that today. That'll be fun. And as a fifth Sunday, Reverend Lee and I are once again sharing the message today. And we don't have fortune cookies this time. So we're just going to have to. Here we go. The force is with me. It's a message. All right, we're sharing the message and we're taking different points of view. Our message is celebrating daily living in the face of opposition. Now, it's easy to celebrate daily living. Yay, we're alive, sun's shining, we're breathing, we got friends. But in the face of adversity, that can be a little different situation. It's not quite so easy to celebrate life when it feels like life is against us. My view is there is no opposition. There just simply isn't any opposition. Now, I realize that doesn't always feel like there's no opposition, does there? We're in an election year. Tensions are high. We drive by the gas station and we watch those little numbers change and go up and up and up, and oh my gosh. And I don't know about you, but every time I go to the grocery store, I am shocked at how much money they want for that little bitty old bag of groceries, right? Sometimes it seems there's more month than money, as they say. So there's a lot of stuff happening. Maybe we've gotten a diagnosis. Maybe we've lost a loved one or a beloved pet. Those can be challenging to us. Those can be challenging. And it doesn't always feel like God is right there. It feels like we might have been abandoned. It feels like the only luck we have is bad luck. You ever been there? Now, are these oppositions, these dualities that we face, are they real or are they illusions? As I said, they feel real, don't they? They feel real. But is it possible that we only experience opposition when or because we believe we're separate from our source, from God, Spirit, the infinite universal presence? Is that possible? Well, this morning I want to turn to one of my favorite Bible verses. It's from the book of Romans, 8th chapter, 31st verse. If God is for us, who can be against us? If God is for us, who can be against us? Now, as I was doing my research, some of the interpretations of this seem to suggest that opposition is normal. And, you have to ask for God's favor to get through it. Now, we don't exactly teach it that way in the Science of Mind, do we? We don't teach that God plays any favorites. God loves all alike because we're all part of that divine. We're all part of God's creation, as it were. I think of it as, well, I don't like my skin cells any more than I like my heart cells, right? Or my blood cells. I don't have a favorite cell in my body, so to speak. They're all necessary to make me, just like we're all necessary in the body of the source, of the body of God. So there are no favorites. God loves us all alike. Ernest Holmes is the author of The Science of Mind. That's the teaching that we teach from. And he says the Spirit of God is an undivided and indivisible wholeness. It fills all time with its presence and peoples space with its activity of its thought. An undivided, indivisible wholeness. No seams, right? No seams. And everything exists within that, including us. And when we can begin to awaken to this awareness, we can begin then to live in that flow of wholeness. And we might just begin to get the slightest inkling of a glimmer that everything is actually for us. Everything is actually for us because we're one organism. Now, logically, it makes sense to say undivided, indivisible wholeness. And in that, with no opposition, if you're in an undivided, indivisible wholeness, it makes sense there's no opposition in there, doesn't it? It's kind of logical. As I was thinking about this morning, it's like, how can I say that in new words? And I thought of the biosphere. And, we've got one in Tucson, but biosphere of itself is a contained system. And if we think of wholeness as unity, as oneness, as this whole system, and in that is everything necessary for sustaining itself, and that is us in God, then we can have a little more concept of what actual oneness and wholeness is, and the interdependency that we are on each other, our environment, and our entire planet and our universe. We live and move and have our being in this wholeness, in this oneness. But how do we shift our awareness from separate individuals to an interdependent zone of wholeness? You know how athletes get in the zone and it seems like they win everything, everything's going their way, they get the perfect passes, everything, they make the shots and all that. They're in that zone. How do we enter a zone of wholeness? How can we continuously put God first in this world of effects and distractions and things that snag our attention all the time and tell us that everything's not okay? How can we do that when we judge so many things in this wholeness as not being whole? Not that. That's outside the sphere, right? That's in the desert out there. That's not inside. If God is for us, means that the source of all creation is not only supporting us, but it is us. It is us. God's not some external deity up there that's manipulating us down here. Anybody still do that? God! I do. I'm not a minister and I know better, but it's habit, right? True, better than looking down. So when we remember that God is us, is for us, and that we are in, through, and as it, and in those rare moments when we actually allow Spirit to move through us and we listen, we recognize it's for our highest good. It's for our highest good. Now you may be thinking, now Reverend Jill, you don't know my situation. You don't know how bad things are right now. You don't know that thing that's got my attention. You looked at my life? We all have issues, don't we? We all face opposition. We all carry burdens. And I'm not minimizing that in any way, shape, or form. It's a fact of life. I know any one of us could stand up right now and say, this is what I'm dealing with. This is what's hurting my heart right now. And again, I'm not minimizing that. Those things do happen. But what I do know is that when we let go and let God, those burdens get a lot lighter. They get a lot lighter. When we resist what is, we create this little firestorm. I love Daniel's reading this morning. It's always serendipitous how appropriate they are. Michael Singler talking about the storm we create in our mentality by our thoughts. And when we resist, we create that little storm, don't we? Oh, it should be different. This should be different. They shouldn't have said that. They shouldn't have done that. What's going on there? What are they doing that? Why is this? Why is that? We're a little Tasmanian devil right there, aren't we? And our thinking does not make it so. But we do that to ourselves. We elevate our blood pressure. We create cortisol in our bodies. We talked about this month, the impact of our minds on our bodies. And then we do things to numb all that because that's bugging us and we don't want to deal with it. It may be shopping. It may be chemicals. It may be something else. Just make that go away. I don't want to talk about that anymore. When we let go and surrender to that divine flow, when we seek God first and we live in that awareness of wholeness, things begin to fall into place, seemingly out of the blue. Out of the blue is my favorite place. Every time I say that or I hear someone say that, I think God is right there. God is right there in that person, that situation, that thing that just happened. Bless you. I don't think that God meddles in our lives. That's not what that means. I don't think there's any meddling. We are free and independent thinkers and choosers of our life experience. But I do think the universe likes to play with us. Anybody else? I think the universe likes to play with us. Have you ever been to the ocean and just had the waves come up and brush against you, or sat in the water near the ocean and feel the waves just come up? I think of that the ocean is God and the waves are God, right? Because it's all one, but they're playing in different forms, and they're playing with us in that moment as we stand there and get splashed by the water and watch the waves come and go. I think that's how the universe plays with us when we're in that flow. When we're in the flow. And then those out of the blue things start to happen. We start to notice them. We start to go, well, there's a good idea. I think I'll follow that one. That's the out of the blue. So if God is for us, who can be against us? Who can be against us? Only ourselves. Only ourselves can be against us. It is our thoughts, beliefs, and actions that can be against us. It's how we choose to react to all of those oppositions and things that come at us. It's how we choose to react to life that creates the experience of our life, isn't it? How we're choosing. Some have hero-shero stories. Some have drama and horror shows. How do we choose to look at the situation that is happening before us? How are we choosing to experience a decrease in our bank account? How are we choosing to experience a job loss? How are we choosing to experience a diagnosis? How are we choosing those experiences? What's your perspective? How do you perceive what happens in your sphere? If you think about our lives, most of us live in the Phoenix area, Scottsdale, and we've got a sphere of influence, our neighborhood we hang out in. We might venture out a little bit. But do you realize that everything that's happening anyplace else, you know about through media and someone's interpretation of what's happening? How do we react? How do we choose our reactions? How do we share then the information that we have and we learn about? Do we share it from a perspective of a positive? Are we inflamed about it? Oh my gosh. Or are we quiet about it? Or do we just choose not to share it? How are we choosing to create our experience of our lives? There's an old story of a kid that had to go to the well and get water, and he had a pot that he put it in. He filled the pot up, and every day he'd walk back through the village, and his pot had a little hole in it, and it would drip water along the way. And he'd get back to the village, and his pot was down a little bit, and the neighbors complained because there was always a little mud going on there. But what happened is flowers began to grow. Flowers began to grow along the path, and the neighborhood suddenly began to get beautiful. So how do we choose our experience? Is it a cracked and broken pot that's creating a muddy street? Or are we planting flowers? Ernest says, we appear to be limited because we see in limited ways. Every demonstration would be easy if we could get ourselves out of the way. When we shift our consciousness to align with divine love and trust, obstacles dissolve, adversity melts away, and our burdens become lighter. They become lighter. We know that what we resist persists. We also know that what we accept and embrace helps us to grow and transform. The key is to see through the illusion of our own resistance, to see through those thoughts that we're holding, to see through those choices that we're making. Ask ourselves if I can make a different choice here. Could I choose to see this differently and therefore make myself feel better? There's no other against us. There's no other against us. There is not God in anything else. There's only one. So we can celebrate daily living in the face of obstacles by aligning with the universal flow. The choice is ours, whether or not we allow it or resist it. Even in that choice, there's nothing against us. God still loves us. It's only our own thoughts, beliefs, and ideas that can ever be against us. And with that, we'll hear from Reverend Lee.
Oh boy. Good morning, everybody. All right. I want to open with a quote from Ernest Holmes, my favorite page in the whole book. What the world needs is spiritual conviction followed by spiritual experience. I would rather see a student of this science prove its principle than to have them repeat all the words of wisdom that have ever been uttered. We are about the practice. This morning we're talking about opposition. And I love what Reverend Jill had to share, if God be for us, who can be against us? And when she said that, the phrase that came to mind was a verse from Hebrews. I don't quote the Bible a lot. I need to quote the Bible more. 11:1, the faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not yet seen. We are dealing with the unseen day in and day out. We are dealing with the process of the unseen finding its way into the seen. And when I think about oppositions, Reverend Jill and I were sitting down to talk about what we were going to do with today. The thing that occurred to me is that within these seeming oppositional experiences are opportunities. How can I find the opportunity hidden within this little bundle of chaos? Because that's what opposition feels like so often, isn't it? It's this big bowl of something in my life that's been stirred up by somebody, usually me, in one way or another. It's my life. I'm participating, right? How am I going to frame it? This year for me, I don't know, I may be alone. I suspect I'm not. But this year for me has been full of a lot of these opportunities to face stuff, opportunities to grow through things, opportunities to embrace a larger life and a larger experience of myself. And quite often I push back against it. Am I alone? Am I the only one? Y'all push? I know y'all do. Because we're here together, right? Like attracts like. Yeah, it's easy to push back against it. because my nature, our nature, I'll speak for me, I'll own it. My nature is to kind of hang on to things the way life is because it's comfortable. It's easy. I don't have to think about it. My mornings had become very automatic, and then I had this opportunity a couple of weeks ago. All of a sudden, some of the things in my work life changed. Some of the dynamics and expected things seemed to shift around, and all of a sudden, I could not just run my Monday through Friday on automatic. I had to change my schedule. I'd been running the same basic schedule for 17 years. Not fun. I pushed back hard. I got very upset, mad at things that I were completely out of my control. I had to choose to flex, to adjust. And as soon as I surrendered, guess what? It turned out it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. That it wasn't like anyway, that's a long story. And I only have 8 more minutes. The key to the whole thing that I'm talking about here is that, well, I want to go back. There's a quote, and I didn't turn it in quick enough, from the book Illusions, out on the shelf out there, from the Messiah's Handbook, that says we seek our challenge. Paraphrase: we seek our challenges in life because we seek their gifts. Their gifts. We are the people who choose to learn and grow. Personally, mentally, spiritually, all of this. We are here because we are set ourselves on a spiritual path to learn and grow, to live more, expand more, be more, become more. We have chosen a life path that asks us and invites us to strip away the things that we are not in order to embrace the things that we are. So whether we call it change, growth, evolution, transformation, an alchemical process, find a word that works, right? So often we talk about change, and it's like it becomes this trigger word, right? So maybe we call it something different. Maybe we call it something that we can embrace. So rather than being asked to change, I'm being asked to transform. Rather than being asked to transform, I'm being asked to evolve. Or maybe I'm just being asked to become what I truly am. How I frame it, how I think about it, is everything. Ernest Holmes goes on to write this: the spirit cannot be or become antagonistic towards us. It is always flowing into us and ever expressing itself through us. This self-expression of God is also the self-expression of humankind, for they are one. They are one. The I am is both individual and universal. All individuality merges into universality. All forms are rooted in one common creative mind, in the Spirit of God, in the Spirit mind, and the Spirit of God in the spirit of humankind. All of it. It's all one. It's all the same, just as Reverend Joe was referring to. No separation, no I am here, you are there, it is there, it's over here. It's all connected, individualized, not separate, but connected. And as you grow, I grow. As I grow, you grow. We grow, they grow, we all grow. And as I make progress, I make it easier for everybody who's coming in behind. It's not so much the words we use per se, but the meanings we attach to them, the feelings that we tie to them. When we talk about affirmative prayer, we talk about using words that bring up the feelings about life that we want to have. Words that lift us up. words that move us to a place where we are in consciousness already experiencing the end result we seek. So when I look at opposition, when I look at the chaos, can I allow myself the time to just stop and allow that chaos to settle down just a little bit so that maybe I can see the gift? So often we talk about as we grow, as we move, as we change, as we evolve, people come and go in our lives. All of a sudden, people that have held us back, people that maybe we're out of sync with, they just disappear. And they're replaced by people that support us in where we're going. I have found over the course of my life that I tend to be surrounded people that are where I want to be so that I can learn from them, where I am so that I can walk the path with them, and maybe just a few steps behind me so that I can reach back and help them. I tend to be surrounded by all three. And so that collection changes, that collection evolves. We draw new people in, and some people move on. That's all part of the change. It's part of the evolution of our lives. So if I ask you today to describe a life worth living, what does a life worth living look like? And more than what it looks like, how does it feel? How do I want to feel about my life? How do I want to feel about my world? How do I want to feel about the people that I am surrounded by the environment that I live in? Because when I can grasp the feeling of that those feelings are what colors my experience. Now, maybe I want to live in a house on 5 acres and a nice 2-story wood-sided thing with a wraparound porch and lots of space between me and my neighbors. That would be great. But if I don't have friends and family, how satisfying and fulfilling is that going to be? You see, it's how I want to feel that makes the difference. It's how I frame my experience, how I tie it all together with my attitudes and my actions and my thoughts and feelings about all of it. That is what makes the difference. Ernest Holmes goes on to say, such is the power of right thinking that it cancels and erases everything unlike itself. It answers every question, solves all problems, is a solution to every difficulty. It is like the sunlight of eternal truth, bursting through the clouds of obscurity and bathing all life in celestial glory. It is the absolute with which we are dealing and nothing else. Nothing else. Such is the power of right thinking that it cancels out and erases everything unlike itself. Our thinking, our believing, our attitudes, the sum total of all of our thoughts drive the tendency of our experience. Shifting thought by thought, word by word, idea by idea, every little bit and piece makes a difference. Sure. Is it any one thought? No. But it's the dominant tendency of our thinking, he goes on to say in another part of the book, the dominant tendency of our thinking that will make the difference, that will turn the tide, that will help us move from turning away from the old condition to turning towards the condition we desire. That is the shift we are invited to make when we are looking at shifting those obstacles to opportunities. We're turning away from that which we do not desire and turning towards our heart's desires. And that is what it means to practice and to embrace that spiritual conviction that Ernest Holmes is talking about. Yeah, can you bring that one back up, Joe? The first one. I'm sorry. Yes, that one. Thank you. What the world needs is spiritual conviction followed by spiritual experience. I would rather see a student of this science prove its principle than to have them repeat all the words of wisdom that have ever been uttered. Taking the time to be still, taking the time to know, to move to the place where we absolutely know that God is all there is. God has love, light, life, peace, power, beauty, and joy. Even in the midst of that chaos, the ugliness, that stirred up thinking, where all of a sudden the committee is fully engaged and I can't find my way out and I just have to go, stop, be still. To be still and know that God is all there is, even in the midst of that. Allows the things to calm, and then all of a sudden, oh, that's why. This is the gift in the midst of that. That is where we seek to get to. So, the practice this week I invite all of us to get into is a very, very simple one. We don't have a slide for it, but it's very easy. Look for the good and be grateful. Every day this week, take the time to simply look for the good and be grateful for it. Because what we give attention to, what? Grows. Just like the boy in the bucket of water. All of a sudden, we're growing flowers because we're giving them attention. So, with that, thank you all for joining us this morning.